The film begins with a PhD student named Margaret. We learn that Margaret is 25 years old and studying mathematics. Her doctoral thesis is on a mathematical theory known as Goldbach's conjecture. No one in the world has been able to prove this theory. Margaret's goal is to be the one to prove it in order to establish her worth in front of the world. This is because she is a mathematical genius and has a strong belief that she will find the solution to the theory. We find out that Margaret is an introverted girl who has no friends at all. Almost all of her life is dedicated to science. On this day, she has an interview at her university. After finishing her interview, she goes to meet Dr. Laurent, who is her thesis supervisor. Dr. Laurent makes her help his students solve a very complex problem. He asks his students to strive like Margaret, as she is his most brilliant student. He also mentions that Margaret will discuss the topic of her thesis in the next lecture in front of them. He asks them to download the research on Goldbach's conjecture to have an idea about it. After the lecture, Laurent tells Margaret that he wants to introduce her to a student named Lucas. He tells her that this student is also a genius in mathematics and is pursuing a master's degree alongside her. He asks her to collaborate with him to help her with her thesis. However, Margaret declines to assist him because she believes he lacks enough experience in mathematical theories. During the lunch break, Margaret goes to eat alone and finds Lucas coming to sit with her. He invites her to go out with him, but of course, Margaret refuses because she doesn't have time for that and leaves him. Afterward, Margaret returns to her dorm and continues studying all night as usual. However, while studying, she encounters a small problem in her thesis. She goes back to Dr. Laurent and asks him to read her thesis because she feels something isn't right. Laurent tells her that he has read her thesis multiple times and found it correct. He doesn't have time to read it again and suggests that she let Lucas help her. Margaret goes to meet Lucas, but she finds he is busy. The next day is the discussion day for her doctoral thesis. We see Margaret discussing her thesis in front of a large number of students and professors. Everything seems to be going normally. However, during the discussion, Lucas interrupts her and points out a flaw in her thesis that she hadn't noticed. This flaw invalidates the theory completely, and she has to start her research over again. Margaret is shocked, as 3 years of effort are wasted because of this tiny flaw. She feels an overwhelming sense of frustration because she couldn't prove the theory. She leaves the discussion, and days go by. We see that Margaret has fallen into a deep depression and has lost all hope of obtaining her doctorate. One day, Dr. Laurent visits her and tells her that what she did was wrong, and that she shouldn't have left the university because she has come a long way to prove this theory. Margaret continues to blame him, saying that if he had read her thesis before the discussion, none of this would have happened. Laurent tells her that it's better for her to change the topic of her thesis and choose something a little easier. He surprises her by saying that he will not be able to supervise her thesis from that day onward, and she needs to find another professor. He suggests that she continue her thesis with a doctor, Blanchard stating that he spoke to him personally and he has no problem starting with her from scratch. Margaret feels frustrated because she was very eager to prove the theory, and at the same time, she doesn't have the energy to start over again. She tells Laurent that she decided to leave mathematics altogether and forget about her thesis. However, Laurent explains to her that what she is about to do is wrong, as the university will force her to pay back all the expenses they have incurred for her over the past 3 years. This does not include the fact that she would waste her effort. But Margaret does not care about his words and tells him that she is willing to bear the consequences of her actions before leaving him. After some time, we see that Margaret applied for a beauty course to try to forget about her field. During the course, the instructor asks them to conduct a survey on the cosmetic products presented to them. However, Margaret and another girl named Noah object to the idea. The instructor is annoyed with their attitude and expels both of them from the course. Thus, the two girls become friends, and we learn that Noah works as a dancer in a nightclub. Her life is very open, unlike Margaret in every way. Margaret suggests that Noah come live with her in her apartment because the rent for the apartment she's in has become very expensive. Margaret also tells her she will pay for 3 months' rent in advance to build her trust. And Noah agrees, taking her to the apartment and showing her around. In the beginning, Margaret doesn't like the apartment because it is very messy, and she is used to living in tidy and clean places. However, she eventually has to live with her. At night, they go to meet the landlord to pay him the rent. Margaret notices that the landlord is playing Chinese gambling with his friends, and she finds the idea of the game very interesting because it relies on calculations and thinking. She downloads the game on her phone and plays it for a long time. After a while, Margaret applies for a job in a clothing store and gets accepted. She is attracted to a young man who works alongside her, but she can't express her feelings to him because she has no experience in relationships and has never been in a relationship before. When Margaret returns home, she tells Noah that she has a crush on a guy at work and asks her for advice on how to approach him. Noah gives her some tips to attract men's attention. The next day, Margaret goes to apply all the tips her friend gave her, but she still fails to talk to him. After work, Lucas calls Margaret and tells her that he read about her thesis and was impressed. He asks her to return to rewrite her thesis again, and he will help her in solving the flaw she encountered because it would be a shame to waste her efforts. However, Margaret refuses, telling him she will not pursue her doctorate, and ends the call feeling upset. When Margaret returns home, she finds Noah getting ready to go to the nightclub where she works. Margaret decides to go with her to change the atmosphere. As soon as she enters the nightclub, she is mesmerized by the world inside because it's her first time in such a place, and she is unsure how to interact with the people there. She stands alone to the side, observing the people as they dance and have fun. At that time, she notices a guy standing alone, and she focuses on him throughout the party. When she sees him leaving the nightclub, she follows him out. The guy becomes worried about her behavior and asks what she wants from him and why she has been following him since earlier. Margaret tells him she likes him and wants to get to know him, but she has no experience in these matters and didn't know how to approach him. The guy takes her to his place to get to know her better. The next day, Margaret arrives at her job feeling happy because this is the first time in her life she has spent a night with a guy. However, her mother calls her and starts yelling at her because she learned from her professor that she left university and will not complete her thesis. So, Margaret goes to the university and argues with her professor for lying to her mother. She asks him to stay out of her life from now on. When Margaret returns home, she finds the landlord stopping her on the stairs and yelling at her for falling behind on the rent payment. Margaret is very surprised because she had given the money to Noah to pay it, so she goes to ask her where the money is. Noah admits that she had applied for a big dance competition and had to pay the rent because she didn't have enough money. Margaret thinks of a way to get money until she gets an idea. She goes to the landlord and tells him she will play Chinese gambling with his friends, and if she wins, she will give him all the money. But if she loses, she will leave the apartment. He agrees to her suggestion, and Margaret plays with his friends. Surprisingly, she wins in every round and gives all the money she wins to the landlord. Of course, all the men present are astonished by her performance because she is very skilled. The landlord offers her the chance to gamble in big clubs and gives her a portion of the money she wins. However, Margaret quickly returns home because gambling has inspired her with a new idea to prove her mathematical theory. Margaret stays up all night working on the theory, and days go by. We see that Margaret has become a daily gambler in big clubs and is winning a lot of money. At the same time, she is working on her theory. One day, her mother visits her and learns that she has become a gambler. And of course, her mother is very worried because her job is illegal and could get her into a lot of trouble. However, Margaret assures her that she is happy with her job and that there is nothing to worry about. She adds that gambling is helping her in proving her theory. At night, Noah tells Margaret that she will be traveling out of town for 2 weeks for the dance competition. Margaret encourages her, telling her that she has confidence in her abilities and is sure she will win the competition. After this, Margaret goes to shower. By coincidence, she hears on the radio that Laurent is going to use Lucas's master's thesis to prove Goldbach's conjecture. The next day, Margaret goes to meet Lucas at the university and apologizes for her cold demeanor towards him lately. She asks him to come to her house so she can show him something important. When they arrive at Margaret's house, Lucas is surprised to find that she has been working for the past 2 months on proving the theory and has made significant progress. Margaret offers him to help her prove her theory, but on the condition that he does not inform Laurent that he is helping her, because he had exploited her to prove the theory and wanted to take credit for it after previously failing to prove it. Lucas agrees to her request and decides to help her. Days go by, and we see that the two of them are working hard on proving the theory, but they haven't reached any conclusion yet, and the atmosphere between them is still tense. Of course, Lucas is uncomfortable with this situation. One day, he candidly expresses that he isn't comfortable with the boundaries she has put between them. They should be more open with one another since they will be working together for a long time. And this situation is not helping at all. Margaret senses that he is right, so she invites him to dinner and shares with him her obsession with mathematics from an early age. She explains that what drew her to it was that her mother is a mathematics teacher. When she was 9, she began grading exams with her mother. When her father divorced her mother, she decided to devote her entire life to mathematics to avoid thinking about it until one day she heard about Goldbach's conjecture. She learned that the theorists could not prove it because it is one of the most challenging mathematical problems in the world. That's when she decided to be the first person to prove the theory. Lucas also shares with her that none of his family members are good at math. He is the only one who loves it and has dedicated all his time to it. When Lucas learns about Margaret gambling, he laughs and finds it very strange because it does not suit her personality. However, Margaret tells him that it is her only source of income since she left university and that gambling has inspired her a lot in her theory. After dinner, they both return home to continue working on the theory. Days go by, and we see that their relationship has evolved, and they have become a couple. One day, Laurent sees them together in the library and immediately understands that they are still working on proving the theory. Laurent decides to visit Margaret at home and tells her that he has always dreamed of proving Goldbach's conjecture. Sometimes mathematicians can be selfish in their work, especially if someone surpasses them. He sincerely wishes for her to prove the theory and offers her to return as his student and continue her thesis with him. Margaret feels from his words that he wants to exploit her again, to have her prove the theory and take credit for it. She refuses to return to work with him, and this motivates her further, giving her the push she needs to continue. One day, Margaret successfully reaches new hypotheses in the theory. She is shocked to find that she has arrived at the solution to the theory. She hugs Lucas and they are extremely happy with the achievement they have accomplished together. However, that night, Margaret cannot sleep due to so much thinking and feels that something is still wrong. She gets up to check the results she arrived at and discovers that she still hasn't reached the solution to the theory. Of course, she becomes incredibly angry and anxious because her discussion is in 2 weeks. Lucas wakes up to her commotion and tries to calm her down, telling her that she can postpone the discussion of her thesis until next year if she can't reach the solution this year. However, Margaret explains to him that she must discuss the thesis this year to prove to Laurent that she is smarter than him and to get revenge on him for abandoning her and trying to exploit her. Suddenly, the discussion escalates into a huge fight due to their differing viewpoints. Margaret also accuses him of having exploited her rather than genuinely helping her, deciding to break up with him. Lucas is deeply hurt by her words because he had set aside his studies and his thesis to help her, but she didn't appreciate that, so he leaves her. That night, Margaret goes to gamble as usual. However, this time she cannot focus and loses for the first time. Of course, she is extremely upset and channels all her anger into studying. She continues studying for many days without any rest, to the point that she starts writing all over the apartment. One day, Noah arrives home and finds Margaret in terrible condition. She suggests that she should return to live with her mother until her nerves calm down. Margaret eventually convinces her and goes to live with her mother. However, at the same time, she continues to study. One day, Margaret confesses to her mother that she has fallen in love with a classmate from the university. Her mother is very happy that she has finally become involved with someone and advises her never to let him go. One day, Margaret is sitting, thinking about how to solve the theory as usual until she notices something specific in front of her. This thing finally leads her to the solution of the theory. Of course, Margaret is overjoyed and calls Lucas to tell him that she urgently needs to meet him. She goes to meet him at the university and tells him that she has finally reached the solution to the theory. Lucas takes her to the lecture hall to write the theory on the board. Margaret begins writing the theory, and at that moment, everyone at the university gathers around her, unable to comprehend that she has finally solved Goldbach's conjecture. As soon as she finishes, everyone applauds her, feeling very proud of her. Laurent is among the audience and is very proud of what she has achieved. He excitedly tells people that this girl is his student. Lucas is also thrilled for her, but he feels she no longer needs him since she solved the theory. He decides to quietly withdraw, leaving the hall. However, Margaret follows him and hugs him, finally confessing that she loves him and cannot do without him. He also admits his love for her. Thank you for joining me on this cinematic journey. If you enjoyed this summary and want to dive deeper into the world of film, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. What did you think about today's film? Is there a movie you'd like us to explore next? Remember, every great film has a story waiting to be told. And here at Cinema in a Nutshell, we aim to present it in a way that's quick, insightful, and engaging. Until next time, keep watching, keep wondering, and keep enjoying cinema in all its forms.